President Trump's planned tariffs on Canada and Mexico may be on hold for now, but they could expose a potential weak spot in America's lumber industry.
Lumber is taking another hit from U.S. President Donald Trump's trade war. New tariffs announced last month are now in effect.
President Donald Trump announced the latest round of tariffs on imports will start this Wednesday. Kitchen cabinets and some furniture are getting hit the hardest.
Breaking news tonight. The American housing market is under pressure again. But this time, the shock isn't coming from Wall Street or the Federal Reserve. It's coming from north of the border. Quietly, steadily, Canada is pulling back one of the most critical materials that holds U.S. housing together: lumber. And the consequences are spreading faster than anyone expected. For decades, the United States built its housing system on a simple assumption: Canadian wood would always be there. Not as a luxury, but as a necessity. The majority of American homes are framed with Canadian softwood. Entire subdivisions, apartment complexes, and affordable housing projects depend on it. This wasn't political, it was structural, it was practical, and it worked. Until tariffs changed everything. Trump's latest round of trade penalties was supposed to force Canada into submission, push production back into the United States, and strengthen domestic industry. Instead, it triggered a reaction Washington didn't calculate. Canadian mills didn't surrender. They shut down. Others slowed production. Some began redirecting supply away from the U.S. entirely. And suddenly, America's construction industry found itself staring at a shortage it cannot solve quickly or cheaply. Right now, builders across the country are facing a brutal reality. Lumber costs are climbing again. Not gradually, but sharply. Projects that penciled out just months ago no longer make financial sense. Developers are delaying starts. Contractors are rewriting bids. And every increase flows straight into the final price paid by buyers and renters. This isn't a future problem. It's already happening. The United States imports roughly 87% of its foreign lumber from Canada. That accounts for about a quarter to nearly a third of all lumber consumed nationwide. Remove that supply, and there is no domestic industry waiting in reserve to fill the gap. American forests exist, but production capacity does not scale overnight. Sawmills take years to build. Labor shortages persist. Permitting takes time. Equipment isn't infinite. And even under optimistic scenarios, U.S. output cannot replace Canadian supply until the end of the decade. Meanwhile, housing demand isn't waiting. America is already short millions of homes. Years of underbuilding collided with population growth, migration, and higher construction costs. Interest rates made mortgages painful, but now, even if rates fall, the supply side is choking. Lumber prices sit at the center of that choke point. And here's the uncomfortable truth: tariffs didn't just raise prices. They destabilized an integrated supply chain that took generations to build. Canada's lumber industry has always been deeply tied to the U.S. market. Roughly 2/3 of Canadian production is exported. For years, America was the obvious destination. Proximity, volume, demand. But trade volatility changed the calculation. Tariffs turned reliability into risk. And once exporters lose trust in a market, they don't wait around hoping politics improve. Canadian mills began adjusting. Some curtailed production rather than sell at a loss. Others started diversifying buyers in Asia and Europe. Governments stepped in with loan guarantees and incentives designed to reduce long-term dependence on the U.S. market. The message was clear: Canada is done building its economy around American unpredictability. That decision may protect Canadian producers in the long run, but it leaves the United States exposed in the short term. Every closed mill in British Columbia ripples outward. Pulp plants lose fiber. Panel producers lose inputs. Rural communities lose jobs. But the shock doesn't stop there. When Canadian output drops, American builders feel it immediately. Less supply means higher prices. Higher prices mean fewer homes built. Fewer homes built means affordability collapses even further. This is how trade policy turns into a housing crisis. Tariffs were sold as protection. In reality, they functioned like a tax on every American trying to buy a home. Thousands of dollars added to construction costs. Higher rents, delayed projects, smaller homes, fewer entry-level builds. The middle class squeezed yet again. And the political irony is impossible to ignore. The policy designed to protect American workers is now pricing American families out of the housing market, while the domestic lumber industry still cannot meet demand. Even at peak output, U.S. mills cover about 95% of consumption, and that assumes full utilization that isn't sustainable year after year. Historically, production growth rarely exceeds 5% annually. Replacing Canadian supply would take years, not months. Meanwhile, demand doesn't pause. Canada understands this math. That's why its response isn't emotional, it's strategic. Diversify markets, build domestic demand, reduce exposure. The same playbook used in aluminum, steel, and critical minerals is now unfolding in lumber. And once those trade routes shift, they don't snap back easily. What makes this moment more dangerous is timing. America needs a housing construction boom, not contraction. The population is aging. Household formation continues. Urban and suburban shortages persist. Yet tariffs are pushing construction costs in the opposite direction. Builders aren't just slowing down, they're freezing. And when building freezes, the entire economy feels it. Construction jobs stall. Local tax bases weaken. Rent inflation accelerates. Younger buyers delay ownership indefinitely. The American dream quietly slips further away. Meanwhile, politicians keep repeating the same line, that America has plenty of forests and doesn't need Canadian wood. Technically true, practically meaningless. Forests don't build houses. Mills do. Workers do. Supply chains do. And those systems cannot be rebuilt on slogans. Canada's mills are closing now. Skills are being lost now. Communities are being hollowed out now. And once that capacity disappears, it doesn't magically return when tariffs are lifted. Even if trade tensions ease tomorrow, the damage is already baked in. The tragedy is that this was entirely predictable. Economists warned that lumber tariffs would hit housing hardest. Builders warned it would slow supply. History showed previous lumber disputes raised prices without solving anything. Yet politics overruled economics. And now, families are paying the price. The next year will reveal the full scale of the fallout. As tariffs persist, more Canadian supply shifts away.